Welcome everyone to another episode here at Macro Crypto, giving you a fresh perspective around the number one cryptocurrency in the space, Bitcoin, the king of crypto. At least once a week, our discussions are around Bitcoin for a reason, because the more you understand about Bitcoin, the better off you will be. Now, as an average Joe within the cryptocurrency space, I'm here to let you know if I can make it, so can you. And the secret is out. All it takes is a little bit of patience, especially in a market such as this crypto winter, the barren desert landscape of cryptocurrency. It's ugly out there right now, but this is an opportunity of a lifetime to get into crypto before the next cycle. And it all starts and ends with Bitcoin. Now look, I love myself some Ethereum, Polkadot, and many other cryptos out there, but Bitcoin is number one for a reason. And in my opinion, it's going to stay number one. Ethereum flippening, everyone talks about it. It's never going to happen, but only time will tell, right? Now, within this video, what you can expect our discussion around Bitcoin is a Bitcoin miner, the number 2 Bitcoin mining company out there, recently sold off over 7,000 Bitcoin in the month of June. What does that mean for the rest of the space, the rest of the miners? Are we going to see a miner capitulation, ultimately dropping the price even further than where it is currently? Is this the domino that falls for that miner capitulation to take place? Also, we're going to talk about El Salvador. How is it going over there for the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender? Also checking in on the Central African Republic being the number 2 country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. What do they have up their sleeve currently? Are they hurting because of this Bitcoin and rest of the cryptocurrency crypto winter that we're seeing in front of us? Now, we will further discuss Bitcoin cycles, what those charts look like, where we're currently at within the cycles, both right in the middle of this video, but also at the end of that video when we look at our trading view. And then we're going to check in on the monthly returns. The last time we saw monthly returns, it was actually back in April, right around tax day, we were still holding out hope that we were going to get a extended cycle within Bitcoin and the rest of the cryptocurrency space. Surprise, surprise. No, we didn't get that. We capitulated off an edge of a cliff, and we are now fully in the middle of crypto winter. Where do we go from here? We're going to be going all over that within this video, and also talking about the pi cycle indicator, something that you might be able to utilize, and we'll showcase this once in a while, especially when we get closer to the next top, because it's predicted the last 7-year tops for Bitcoin within 3 days of accuracy. So we're just going to show that, let you see that for yourself within this video. And of course, end our video off with a discussion around dollar cost and averaging into Bitcoin, both on a monthly scale as well as a weekly scale. Let's go ahead, everyone, dive into our news surrounding Bitcoin. Let's get into it. So as we dive into the Bitcoin news, we first look at Core Scientific, which sold over 7,000 Bitcoins for about 167 million in the month of June. Why did this take place? Well, the company said proceeds from the sales were mainly used for payments toward ASIC servers, capital investments in additional data center capacity, and debt repayments. Core said it will continue to sell self-mined Bitcoins to pay operating expenses, fund growth, retire debt, and maintain liquidity. More importantly, or most importantly, maintaining that liquidity, extending that runway to keep operations for mining Bitcoin is of the utmost importance. But this is the number 2 Bitcoin mining company in the entire world, or at least I think so if I did my research properly. But what does that mean for some of the smaller Bitcoin mining groups out there? Because if they're forced to sell, do they have enough liquidity to have that runway, or do they have to go into bankruptcy? This is what we saw back in 2018. At the end of 2018, that final capitulation, more than 50% drop of Bitcoin. There was a forced sell-off for all the miners that were holding Bitcoin, holding out hope that brighter days were ahead. Are we going to see that same thing take place? Is history going to repeat itself? In my opinion, as I talked about last week, I think we've already seen the worst happen. Now, I think we're going to be sitting on the edge of a cliff for quite some time, really putting a lot of fear in the market. And yes, that could be totally wrong, and we can go down another 50%. But for the rest of the year, it's just all going to be up in the air. And it's really going to come down to what happens with these Bitcoin miners alongside what happens with the macroeconomics of the entire world. So we're going to kind of keep a close eye on this on a weekly basis, what other miners are doing. But as you can tell, the number 2 miner within the entire world sold off 7,000 in the month of June alone. What does that look like for the month of July, August, September, and well into the rest of 2022? Now, checking in on El Salvador, a poor country made Bitcoin as a national currency. The bet isn't paying off. Now, this was an article by the New York Times, a shit one at that. Obviously, taking a chance on Bitcoin as legal tender, El Salvador being the first country to do so, there's going to be adversity, especially doing so right when crypto winter seemingly started. Such a difficult time to do so, but this is going to pay off dividends well into 2023, 2024, as long as they can hold off all the naysayers. Now, it brought El Salvador's president, Bukele, the adulation of the tech company or community, but reduced scarce funds and moved the nation closer to default. So they got about 60% of their population to download the app or the Bitcoin wallet, that is, for the allowment of payments through Bitcoin. What this means is Bitcoin was allowed as a payment system, and it was actually as legal tender. All companies and stores had to accept Bitcoin alongside the national currency, which is actually the US dollar. Now, what ended up happening was from that 60% of the individuals that started to use it, currently just over 10%, or at least that's what all data is indicating, is currently still using it. But that's a huge amount of individuals. If we're saying 10% of the entire population is currently using Bitcoin as a payment rail within their country. And this has only been adopted for, I think, 6 months or so. But I could totally be wrong. I should have done my research on that part. But ultimately, what this means is at least we can have a good understanding of, okay, the first was 60% because they gave $30 worth of Bitcoin to whoever downloaded the app. Then from there, 10% is still ongoing using Bitcoin. Are we going to continue seeing that type of adoption? That 10% becomes 20% in a year's time, maybe even 35, 50, and we really start to get that ball rolling. So we're going to keep a close eye on what happens with El Salvador being the first country to adopt Bitcoin. The second was the Central African Republic. CAR launches a cryptocurrency dubbed Sango Coin. Now, understand what Sango Coin is not Bitcoin, because they adopted Bitcoin as legal tender within their country. But from our understanding is that they also adopted Sango Coin, or they are going to create Sango Coin because they have so many natural resources that they're going to put on the blockchain to allow for them to track those resources properly. Now, the Sango Coin is supposedly going to be backed also by Bitcoin itself. Will Sango Coin be a layer 2 on the Bitcoin network, or through the Lightning Network, or is it going to be an ERC on Ethereum? I have no idea. And this article does not allude to anything with where that single coin is. So we're going to have to take a deeper dive into that. But that's really super interesting if they're able to produce a cryptocurrency within their country that is backed now by Bitcoin. Bitcoin being a reserve asset, very similar to gold, where there used to be a gold standard. And this is the first proof of that. So it's going to also be very interesting to see how Central African Republic ultimately starts to thrive within the cryptocurrency environment. Now, when we go check in on our halving, right now we are in the third halvening cycle. That's our current cycle, which happened on May 11th of 2020. Now, the block reward, we've talked about this times 6.25. The mined amount of Bitcoin within this period is going to be over 1.3 million. And that's going to eventually give us to a point where it's going to be 93.75% of all Bitcoin in existence will be mined. Right now, we're just a little bit over 90%. The fourth halvening will be expected somewhere in the month of May. This will get us down to 3.125. Then the fifth halvening will get us down to 1.56, further getting us to that sixth halvening all the way down to 0.78 Bitcoin per block. Ultimately, reducing the supply so much out there, Bitcoin will become more scarce every 4 years. Typically, it's becoming more scarce every 10 minutes as a new block new Bitcoin enters the market, that's less Bitcoin to actually be mined every single 10 minutes. So we're just kind of giving you a little indication where we're at in the cycle, ultimately understanding what the monthly returns look like, what has historical data given us before. We've had only a total of two terrible months, or 2 terrible years, I should say. Sorry. That was back in 2014 and 2018, the big crashes of Bitcoin. Currently, we are hitting our third red. All indications, obviously, 4-year cycles, this is going to be a terrible year. Now, what has happened in the past is ultimately back in 2018, we had 6 months of red. Now, they weren't huge months except that month of November that headed into December, that final capitulation for Bitcoin when the miners did sell off. But we had a decent month of July. So if we do continue into a month of July where it looks successful, do not think that better days are ahead for this year. Worse things can come about. We can go into $23,000 worth of Bitcoin, or $25,000 worth of Bitcoin, and ultimately come revisit the lows we had and really have a lot of swings and scaring the market at the end of the day. So this is just to show you where we've been, what could happen. Ultimately, it's going to write its own history. Nothing that has happened in the past is going to give us a clear indication this has to happen this way. We kind of were hoping that in April, tax season, we were going to get a turnaround. Typically, April has been so kind to us, but we had an ugly month of April. We have actually basically mirrored last year's, as you can tell right here with all this red. Ultimately, do we get a nice turnaround in July, give us some reprieve within this ugly markets? But understand that in 2018, that ended off with 6 consecutives, technically 7 if you went into 2019. 7 consecutive months of red, really drawing out the pain, really taking out those who don't have patience within the market. Hopefully you have plenty of that to understand what is around the corner. Because if you look, of course, after these painful 12 months of red throughout this history, we got 3 years of returns. Okay. Yes, there was a lot of red in there, but when we're talking about 91%, 174, 76% in all of those for those years from start to finish, before 48, 93, 331%. Those are the type of returns that you are here for, that you have to weather the crash year, the year that is really trying to push everyone out of the ecosystem. So patience is the secret weapon. Now, as we look at the PI single cycle top indicator, this has been something that has actually produced the top within 3 days in the last 7 years. So since 2014, it predicted that top. It also did so in the 2017 top and within this top. So if we go ahead and zoom in on this, this is where the 350-day moving average times the price by 2 is one of the indicators, while also given a moving average of 111 days. So the previous 111 days of Bitcoin's price with correlation of the previous 350 days of Bitcoin's price, the average of all that times 2, those 2 indicators, when they cross or when they finally meet within 3 days, the indicator of Bitcoin's top has been produced. Knowing this will give you really a lot of help in the future. So if we want to zoom into this even further, and let's go ahead, zoom into this even closer, you'll see right here when these 2 finally did meet back on April 11th, Bitcoin's price was at $60,000. And ultimately, Bitcoin's price topped out during that cycle up to about 63. Now, yes, you might tell me 69,000 later in November was actually the top. Yes, that is the new all-time high. But in all indications, majority of people will indicate that the April peak of Bitcoin was actually the market top. Now, history is always going to play a factor. 2 years from now, we're really going to get a good indication on where we really truly felt like Bitcoin was overbought and then where Bitcoin was oversold and find the bottom. But this is it giving us a little indication that we can maybe take into 2025 on finding out, okay, are we really seeing a top happen for Bitcoin and the rest of cryptocurrency space? Is this a time for me to exit out of some of my positions that aren't within Bitcoin? Because as you all know, altcoins get shit on when it comes to the space itself, and ultimately against Bitcoin when we do have those sell-offs. So we're going to keep a close eye on the Pi cycle indicator, and this will give you a good indication where you might find that Bitcoin top and bottom. Now, as we further look at the Bitcoin cycles themselves, the red indication in between the two orange is those cycles. Cycle 1, 2, 3, right now that we're currently in, heading into the fourth cycle somewhere in May 2024. But what we've always found is that these red lines are the indication where the midway point of the cycle takes place. We always see the cycle bottom right after that midway point, ultimately hitting about 5 to 6 months afterwards. This was only a month from where we were, but it doesn't mean that it has to take place 5 months out. It just means it has to happen after that midway point. So we're going to keep a close eye on this. Of course, eventually in the coming months, we're going to see the bottom if we haven't already seen it. And we're just all going to be on the edge of our seats waiting for that bottom to take place and heading to that next cycle, which ultimately will give us our new highs. Now, lastly, we talk about dollar cost and average to Bitcoin. We finally got a 500,000 Satoshis into Bitcoin for the first time into our dollar cost and averaging sheet. And then we also bought in the month of July. Obviously, our profit and loss, we're getting hit hard with the price of Bitcoin. Our cost basis is at 36,000, 37,000. So of course, with a Bitcoin price around $20,429 currently right now, actually a little bit under that at this point. Yeah, we're getting hit hard. But knowing that Bitcoin's price will be at $1 million one day, this all makes it a little easier. Each $100 is $5,000 in the future that we're collecting into our piggy banks, into our bankless self-sovereignty wallet that you should have yourself. Do not have your Bitcoin on an exchange. Everyone, I really hope you guys enjoyed this content. I know I ramble on a lot. If you have something that you want to see within the video itself, throw it in the comments. Bitcoin related for this type of videos, of course. Till next time, everyone. Peace.